Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN Sunday for Sunday, February 27th, 2022. We've got another great show for you this week. We've got members of the media, academia, and financial services all standing by to discuss the latest news and information in lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more. So sit back, relax, enjoy this episode of BRN Sunday. Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to kick things off with a look at what's happening on Capitol Hill. There is a lot going on around litigation, legislation, regulation. Joining us on the line, you know them as the Legal Eagles, but we also know them as David Levine and Kevin Walsh. Both are principals with Groom Law Group, an employee benefits law firm based in good old Washington, D.C. Gents, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
It's great to be here, Jeff. Thanks for having us.
It's great to talk to you guys. Kevin, let's kick it off. There's obviously some major geopolitical events going on. We're not going to get into the politics of that, but I think everyone's been following the news. And the Biden administration just announced some sanctions. And I wanted to ask you gentlemen about, in terms of retirement plans, what if you're a plan sponsor, a fiduciary? First, is there anything you need to do as a result of these sanctions with respect to your investments? And two, what if there's something you want to do or think you want to do?
So if you're a plan sponsor, it's worth being aware of the sanctions. And if you're a rare plan sponsor who is, directly buying individual securities or directly buying government debt or directly buying, debt of corporations in various places, then it definitely is a concern, which is, as sanction laws evolve, coming into compliance with them. Russia was first sanctioned in 2014, or most recently sanctioned in 2014, and now they've had further sanctions against them in this past week. And that does impact the ability of folks who are managing assets to invest in those areas, and not just impacts their ability to do that, but the sanctions that we have come from the Office of Foreign Asset Control. It's a scary little agency within Treasury, and it's in everyone's best interest to comply with their rules. For most plans, though, they make investments through U.S. asset managers or through non-U.S. asset managers, and that's where compliance becomes significantly easier. For the most part, U.S. asset managers have their own obligations to comply with sanctions, and in contracts generally, we'll see reps that the managers will comply with applicable law. When you're dealing with a European asset manager or an asset manager from some other third country in the world, one, if your asset manager is in a sanctioned country, that's something worth looking at to make sure that it complies with OFAC's rules. And in many cases, if you're directly contracting with somebody in a financial industry in a sanctioned place, that can raise its own red flags. But if you're dealing with a European asset manager, for example, many of the U.S. sanctions are prohibit you doing indirectly what you can't do directly, or they have secondary sanctions. And to that effect, they typically say, Americans can't invest in entities that are then going to, violate the sanctions. And also, we sometimes just directly impose our sanction rules on third parties. So we'll say that European countries, despite the fact that they're not, U.S. nationals, U.S. citizens, U.S. based, have to comply with our sanctions rules, or they themselves will suffer consequences. So from the investment standpoint for plans, it's important to be in compliance. It's worth looking at your contracts again. Make sure you've got that OFAC reps in there. But sanctions are kind of a constant topic. I mean, there's a number of countries that are sanctioned at the moment. There's sanctions related to Cuba. There's sanctions related to South Sudan. There's sanctions related to Iran. Most asset managers, I say most, but it really ought to be all, are very focused on sanctions compliance. And so for ERISA plans that aren't making direct investments, the impact of this tends to be somewhat lessened. The other area where this comes up is in terms of payments to retirees. And depending on the sanctions, it can be such that absent the license, you're not allowed to cut a check to a retiree living in certain places. So as sanctions evolve, it's worth checking with your financial institution, whoever it is that's actually cutting the check, checking the addresses of your folks, and just running by your internal or external OFAC compliance folks, the locations of folks that you're cutting checks to.
Yeah, Kevin, that's great information. David, I would expect that, and maybe I'm wrong because we've had sanctions before. Kevin just illustrated to us, but maybe this comes up more. I mean, this is really a significant event, and I'm wondering if people like yourself may receive some more phone calls than normal. And it really sounds like it's just checking with the plan sponsor, the employer checking, the fiduciaries checking to make sure that the asset managers who are, the mutual fund managers, they say, or you guys got it. You guys got this. Are you following up on this?
Yeah, and the answer is, yeah, we will get some questions, especially for larger plans that have separately managed accounts and want to understand their managers. It could be in the big plans, and even in some of the product design, we think we will get some of this because underneath it all, ERISA plans are still subject to these same rules, Jeff. So I think it's good to be aware of this. We've dealt with this with other divestment and other restrictions on trading before. So it's a well-trodden path, but obviously what's going on right now is certainly complex, and not just in the land of ERISA. There are obviously far larger implications.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for stopping by. Really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you back again next week. Take care. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye, guys.
It's not some magical number, and it's not something we just achieve at the end. It's a feeling of freedom to live our lives the way we intended, through the ups, the downs, all of it. This is financial security, and Lincoln Financial Solutions will help you get there as you plan, protect, and retire. This is Lincoln Financial.
Welcome back, and now we're going to talk technology and consumer products and finance and a lot more. I think we try to bring it all together in this segment. And joining me now to discuss all this is Daniel Klein. He is managing editor for TheStreet.com. Dan, great to talk to you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Jeff. I've had like 2 hours of sleep, lots of flight delays, fire alarm at 7 a.m. I am caffeinated and ready to go.
Well, we're pleased to have you. And look, Dan, obviously there's a lot happening in the world backdrop right now. We're not going to get into the all of that, but one thing that I think it relates to that I know you wanted to kind of weigh in on, first of all, cybersecurity. There's a huge risk there. There has been even before the Ukraine-Russia invasion, and a lot of people are burned out from getting the emails that they need to do X, Y, and Z. That presents a major risk in 2022.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm that person. Every time I get one of those IT emails like change your password, or even just routine having to change my password, there's a part of me that's like, oh God, and I know there's software that fixes this, but I have to remember 17 new passwords. I had to go through a whole corporate thing where I had to change my password, but I couldn't do it because you needed to be on the VPN, which we don't really seem to use anymore, which is also a security issue, I suppose. But I changed it using one of the corporate IT guys, and I have no idea what password it actually changed. It's never come up to input that new password anywhere. So yeah, there's absolutely burnout, because here's the reality. If every day I wake you up at 5 a.m, be alert, there's hornets outside and your house might catch on fire. After a few months, you're just going to be like, oh, okay, there's hornets or my house might. It hasn't, so I'm not that worried. And the reality is we're probably all getting hacked every day, but not in a meaningful way that impacts our life. So it doesn't really prepare you for when it actually happens. And as someone who is identity thefted, when it actually happens, it's really, really awful.
Yeah. Well, Dan, let's bring this now to this invasion. We're not going to talk about the politics of this. Obviously, human catastrophe in a lot of ways, economic catastrophe. But let's talk about cybersecurity. We've been warned by our government that there could be cyber attacks. We just talked about burnout, but this could impact the federal government, state governments, corporations, water treatment plants, right? There's a lot of things that we still need to be vigilant about given the world circumstances.
Yeah, it's problematic. So I think we know as a country that our security is not there. That we're vulnerable, that there are things that could go wrong, and it hasn't really been a political priority. I think businesses have been better about it, but look, it's a lot more relevant if your water treatment plant is attacked than if your local Target can't process credit cards. Both are disasters in different aspects, but one is obviously more meaningful of a disaster. I think as a country, this is going to sound awful, but I think we almost need like a security 9/11 before anybody takes it truly seriously. And what I hope that means is, something like what we had with the pipeline, where there was 2 days you couldn't get gas because of hackers, not everywhere, just in a small corner of the country. But I think we need some level of scare to understand the reality here. Because look, when I got identity thefted 5 or 6 years ago, for like 2 years, I was really hyper vigilant with my security because I dealt with the hassle of filing police reports and not being able to electronically file my taxes and all the other things that are a byproduct of that. But I do think it goes back to that complacency. And look, if somebody hacks you and makes like a bad charge on your credit card and your card gets shut off and you have to deal with the company and be on the phone for 90 minutes, sure, that's annoying, but it didn't really change your life. It didn't actually cost you any money. I think we're going to need to see something major happen, and and that's horrible. And look, we've probably had all sorts of propaganda attacks and other things that we sweep under the rug. But the reality is, remember when Target got breached a bunch of years ago? It was a giant news story that literally cost the CEO his job. Now it's almost like routine that big companies, have their data compromised, and I don't even think it makes the news all that much anymore. So there's a huge level of fatigue here because you're sort of warning against something that isn't actually going to happen to most people. It's just going to be really bad when it happens to you.
Yeah, I refer to that as the boy who cries wolf syndrome, or maybe now it's the person who cried wolf. But Dan, let's shift gears. In the UK government, I would say kind of, we talk about privacy. Or we just talked about cyber. Let's talk about privacy. UK government introducing a bill that will require tech platforms. We're talking about Google, Facebook, I guess Twitter, and others. There's probably numerous that I can't even recollect, but they have to verify user identities. Thoughts on this and the impact to these social media platforms and just in general? What does this mean?
Jeff, I love that you're pretending you don't remember TikTok with all your dance moves you put on there.
Yeah, I don't. My dance moves are horrible. Ask my wife.
So what the UK government wants to use is a two-factor identification. So when you're on social media, whether it be your Twitter, your Facebook, or you're time traveling back to your MySpace or your Friendster account, they want to know you are you. And in application, this is fabulous. In practice, it's kind of frustrating, and I could see why Facebook and Twitter would fight against it. So we used two-factor identification for pretty much every piece of login when I worked at Motley Fool. And the problem with two-factor identification is sometimes you need to have internet on your computer and your phone. And, well, if you're on a plane, that may not be an option. If you're in a cafe, that may not be the way to go. So I think this is really important, but I also do think as part of this, we need to find ways to sort of evolve how we prove our identity. Because we know that's flawed. Like, and Jeff, I mentioned I'm in a casino. I'm in a big casino in Cherokee, North Carolina, and I bought a coffee this morning. I put it on my credit card, and they asked to see my license. I did not take my license out. I showed it at them. I weigh like 60 more pounds in my license than I do now. And obviously I'm still recognizable, but the half glance the person gave my license does not count as security. So as a nation, this is a digital problem. This is an in-person problem. And look, I like to see the UK taking steps because the reality is if the Facebooks of the world are mandated to do this somewhere, it makes it easier for them to do it elsewhere because they can't say, well, it's too big an ask. And I do think Europe has been a little more progressive about safety and security than the U.S. has been. And again, I think it's a very fine line between convenience because here's the reality. If you had my Facebook password, could you post like embarrassing things or even, things that get me in trouble at work? Sure. But there's really nothing sensitive on my Facebook. Like if you could access my Facebook, it's not like in like my hidden notes to myself, I have my social security number and my credit card number. You might be able to see some private messenger conversations where, like, I don't know, people are asking me for jobs. But I do think a trend towards more security is really, really important, because your Facebook password might also be your bank account password. You're not supposed to do that, but I guarantee like 80% of the people listening have done that.
Yeah, well, password management, Dan, still a major issue. If you have 80,000 passwords, you got some people like uniformity, and again, we've talked about software and middleware that manages that. But again, how safe and secure is that? All right, Dan, let's do a fun story, and I think this one, with all the things going on our planet this day, this one's kind of fun. And a new map, this is according to CNN, but it's been on space.com and others. A new map of the night sky reveals 4.4 million galaxies. Dan, we only know a sliver about our universe.
Jeff, well, as the proud owner of a star, no, just kidding, if you've seen those late night commercials, here's the thing, I'm a sci-fi nerd. I kind of have to believe that there are other galaxies, and that, I know it sounds ridiculous, but like some of what we read in sci-fi is like real and out there, and that's not literal. I don't mean that literally, but I do like to think the universe is bigger than us, and obviously we probably don't want to meet the rest of the universe. Like, we're not great at getting along with, say, Canada. I'm not sure how great we'd be at getting along with like the new species from Gleep Glorp 5. But that being said, as someone who, has read, Asimov and Heinlein and all the different sci-fi greats, and frankly is a huge Star Wars fan, I like to think that there are galaxies elsewhere where there's other takes on this. And, the reality is, if there's other sentient life, it probably doesn't look like us. It doesn't necessarily breathe oxygen. There's all sorts of other possibilities out there. But it almost challenges my beliefs the way you'd like be challenging someone's faith to say that this isn't the case. Like, I don't know, the universe is so vastly incomprehensible. I like thinking that, like, the Mandalorian's out there somewhere. Probably not, but, some facsimile thereof.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Dan, on a couple of those points. I mean, from what we know, and we know, a lot of this is hypothetical or, hypothesis, right? Because you need to test and do confirmation, and because we can't actually go far distances from our planet, where there's no interstellar travel yet, but we'll leave that to Elon Musk and Virgin Galactic and others to figure that out, right? But the universe is expanding, and anytime you can kind of look away from the planet and see that there are other galaxies which have stars or multiple stars, and or not, have solar systems. All the galaxies have multiple stars, but there has to be something out there. And I kind of share your belief. I'd like to think Luke Skywalker, Mr. Spock, and their likenesses are out there. And to your point, who knows what the building blocks of life are? We only know water and oxygen and the things that make us up, but we don't know the other building blocks where life began. So I think it's just kind of cool and neat, and it's a good diversion from all the crap that goes on here on the planet.
Look, I think we're living in the generation that's going to start our Star Trek adventure. I think in our lifetime, we're going to see man colonize Mars. Maybe not in a meaningful way. Maybe it's 4 guys living in a tiki hut, a very advanced tiki hut. But I do think, like, it's not crazy that you and I might take, like, a moon cruise, like, 30 years from now. Like that technology is starting to happen. And look, Virgin Galactic's a bit of a gimmick. It's an 18-minute flight that's barely cracked space, but it's not a huge leap from there to actual, space Disney or whatever it is we're talking about. And I think my son's generation is really going to be the first one where there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people making that decision. Like, am I going to get on the Battlestar Galactica and, like, journey into the beyond and cryosleep for 5 years or whatever it might be? Because, I don't think we're getting a warp drive or anything like that. So these distances are very far. But, you can make the same argument for retail you make for humanity, that when you stop expanding, you start dying. And I think human nature is to grow and expand. And, I do think we'll have hotels on the moon in the next, 20 to 50 years, which is a prediction, Jeff, that I'll come back on in 50 years to talk about.
Well,
if I'm wrong, I will. If I'm wrong, I'll buy you a pizza.
Well, hey, look, reality is with healthcare being as good, we may be doing this show. I'm planning to do this show as long as I can. I've been working out, trying to stay fit, and you're going to be staying at the Hotel Tranquility Base. Dan Klein, we're going to leave it there. The things we can dream about if we could just all get along. Dan, great talking to you as always. Thanks so much, and we look forward to having you back on the program again next week, my friend.
May the force be with you.
You too, my friend. Bye. That wraps up this episode of BRN Sunday. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest in lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to see our latest content and search our archives? Well, check out our website. That's www.broadcastretirementnetwork.com. And our streaming partners like Amazon, Roku, Samsung, over 100 more. We're back again tomorrow for BRN AM. We'll have another very special guest. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.